an intensive 45 minutes followed by Q&A as our panelists with their very distinctive stories prove actually to the rest of us that courage is that little voice that at the end of the day that says, I'll try again tomorrow. That mental health and wellness is not a disease to be shunned away with fear or with judgment. Strengthen our mindset in this period of constant change, especially in the current pandemic situation, where there's lots of chaos. I think the word chaos speaks it all, especially in this VUCA world, right? So emotional resilience will help us to adapt in these stressful situations. So how do we actually do that? So let's create and build a safe community for humanity to really take courage and cultivate a healthy lifestyle for our mental and emotional well-being. So let me start introducing my panelists. With us today, we have Dr. Ho. And Dr. Ho is, let me just add spotlight on her. So Dr. Ho Yiling is a clinical psychologist. Maybe you want to unmute and say hi to our audience.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you, Yiling. So Yiling is actually a registered clinical psychologist with several years of experience specializing in treating psychological trauma. And she's currently working in the healthcare sector, supporting adults who've had experienced medical and or interpersonal trauma. So she has experience in child welfare, crisis work, having worked with children, adolescents, and with histories of abuse and neglect. So Yiling completed her doctorate degree and residency in Australia and has a keen interest in advocacy work, namely in public education in mental health and ways to provide trauma-informed care in everyday relationship, right? Workplaces and various social services or healthcare settings. So thank you very much for joining us today, Yiling. We look forward to hearing and leaning into your expertise. Now, next up, we actually have Megan as well. Megan is familiar scene, can I say, in the youth sector. Say hi, Megan.
Hello, everyone.
So Megan is a passionate and committed individual when it comes to working with youth and young adults. She's driven to help them find their potential and instill hope. She herself is actually a person living with mental health conditions and went through life feeling misunderstood and without guidance. But today, noticing the friends and family around her through the challenges with their mental health, she felt inclined to be equipped to support others. And so today, she is a counselor with Limitless, a youth agency that provides mental health services to youth with diagnosed conditions such as and as well who may be going through challenging time. So she's leading an outreach team, and I've stopped share because I wanted to show something, and I've got permission actually from my panelists to do this very quickly as well. So Megan, would you like to quickly talk about?
Yes, thank you, Lynette, for, and the rest of the panelists for letting us do this. So this is a fundraising initiative that Limitless is actually currently doing right now. So we are doing this virtual run for hope. And the reason why we feel this is so important is because if you look at the numbers that we have here, in 2020, we saw 373 youths. And by this year in August, we actually had 657. And we will be running, the numbers again sometime soon. And I can tell you that by now we are already in like mid 700s, right, in our numbers, and the number just keeps increasing. So there's definitely always the demand for services when it comes to mental health that we would love to be able to provide. So the contribution actually goes towards our outreach efforts, as well as expanding our clinical team so that we can get more counselors and social workers on board that can attend to these youths. So it really means a lot for us, and of course the youths that we're supporting. If you're able to sign up for the run, I know it's somewhat ending soon because there's 2 more days left, including today. But if you go to our link, you can look at more of the work that we're doing, as well as go to our giving.sg page to support us in whatever way that you can. Yeah.
Thank you, Megan. It's never too late when there is a heart to share. And that's why, we were talking and we've got permission to share that. So thank you for sharing in and leaning in as well. So I've also included the QR code into the slide. So if I may be cheeky, if you have your phone now, scan the QR code. So it's a little, every dollar counts, because I think the work that Limitless is doing, providing even pro bono to those who need it, right? And the amazing thing that Megan shared in our huddle and catch up was that more than 70% of the work that they're doing, the people that come in, are those youths that have actually taken that courage to step forward, right? So they are the ones that are coming forward to seek help. So let's help them by scanning that QR code that's in that slide to support them as well in that journey. So thank you very much, Megan. So let me move on to then Amy. Amy is my, how many years have we known each other? I think more than 20 years, right, Amy? Okay, never mind.
Yes.
All right, okay. So Amy, unmute yourself and say hi, perhaps, yeah?
Hi, hello everyone.
Thanks, Amy. So, so Amy Kang is a single mom with a 13-year-old boy and actually a food delivery rider. And I'm very proud of her for her accomplishment thus far. Having been through the path of the less understood in our society, living as a person with mental health condition, Amy wants to make it a smoother path for people after facing her mental health challenges. She'd like them to understand what we all can, that we all actually can recover and integrate back to the society. She took up the role to advocate mental health issues since last June, 2020, as she felt the need to address this issue of social stigma towards mental health. She's glad that her results has paid off, with many stories and comments sharing that her story is inspirational. Actually, if you look for her on her Instagram, you can find her story. Amy shares her recovery journey as help me pronounce this correctly.
Schizophrenia.
Thank you, Amy. Yeah. Person. As she believes that by standing forward, more people will be courageous to face up to their mental health challenges, and that act of inspiring others and opening up AIDS is itself a healing process too for her. So thank you, Amy, for coming forward to share with us.
Thank you, Lina.
Thank you. All right. Next up, we have Lisa Chong. Lisa, you want to say hi? I can't. Yeah. All right. So next up, we have Lisa Chong. Lisa founded Still in Maternity, a homegrown maternity wear label designed to cater to the needs of new moms and moms-to-be in the corporate world. So that's why you see she's probably dressed in one of her beautiful pieces as well. So Stillin is the beautiful result of her breaking through from her postpartum depression and grief from losing her first child. As a mom of two boys now, she understands very well the struggles of moms in the workforce, juggling the demands of work and family. Lisa has a passion to serve moms, community, especially in raising awareness in the need for mental self-care, and recently spearheaded the Swap for Courage campaign, a fundraiser for the safe place to help families with unsupported pregnancies in collaboration with the Women of Courage Asia. So, Lisa, you want to have 1 second airtime? No, 10 seconds.
Okay.
No, 1 minute, 1 minute.
No. But
No need,
thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here to be able to share the platform with so many distinguished guests about their experience as well. And let's roll on so that we can have the audience learning more from the experience that's going to be shared later.
Okay, thank you. And that's actually really Lisa, right? She's very giving, very generous. And I've just very sneakily put on the QR code for the Swap for Courage here as well. So everyone who is interested in donating to the safe place, because all proceeds go to them directly, and they help women with unsupported pregnancies, right? So that's the slide there. I'm going to stop share now. And next up, we have Serene. Serene Tom is an associate partner of IM Advisory Group, which actually the backstory behind it is that Serene was actually our speaker as part of the Swap for Courage campaign, and that's how we knew each other. So her tagline is "There must be more," because Serene is a single mom veteran in her industry, and she supports both her daughter and her parents while running her business practice. She enjoys a close bond with her daughter, who is the big why behind her engine. That's beautiful. Having been through periods of financial struggles, business failures, she's designed a system of finances that deals with hard work, smart work, and hard work, right? Strong advocate on empowering women through financial literacy to gain clarity and control over not just their financial lives, but also take stock in their personal lives as well. So Suri, want to say hi?
Hi.
All right. Okay, sorry, not high school. I feel a bit like that now. Because we were talking about 6 panelists with so strong background. And actually, I have a feeling we're going to overrun time. So before we actually really do overrun time, can I have my panelists' permission to let's go through the 3 themes that we had talked about, and then also address any Q&As. And if you need to run, I understand and I appreciate and I thank you for your time and effort in actually being with us today. Yeah, thank you so much. All right, so let's start doing this. Okay, hang on. So if you are on, transfer yourself to gallery view so that you can see everybody, because I just played with the setting, right? Okay, so the first question. So we're going to go through 3 themes today, which is about defining courage, emotional resilience. How do you actually combine the 2? And then that one takeaway, right? So defining courage. So first up, let's have Lillian, right? Lillian, what defines courage and why is it important?
Right, for me, courage is always a choice. Courage is a choice to take intentional action in the face of fear to create the change that you want to see in your life. So to me, courage is a choice. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Why is it important? Yeah, because it requires courage to take that intentional action. Maya Angelou says that courage is the most important of all virtue, because without courage you can't do things. You can't practice all the other virtues consistently, right? Yeah.
Okay, it's a choice to practice consistently. Thank you. How about Lisa? Lisa, so how does actually courage help us or have helped you during this pandemic? Because in your industry, and plus with the multiple roles, the balls that you're juggling in the air.
Well, I guess, the pandemic has already brought along so much changes to, our lives, our daily lives. We all have to adapt and change our ways of living. And I think it's inevitable that fear and anxiety will have set in at some point in time, even as we learn how to juggle and deal with the new ways of living, especially with our restriction, easing, restricting. We all constantly have to be at a change, and in some ways, I guess some people along the line will already have been paralyzed by the fear and the anxiety. Some may have been able to move on, some may not. And for me, courage is so important during this pandemic because it really helped us to look at the situation for what it is. I mean, we can choose to run away and say, it's affecting everybody else except me. I'll just live my way the way I want to live it. But it's not going to happen that way, because everyone around us is changing to adapt with this as well. And this pandemic is going to be here for a long time to stay, I would say. I mean, even as we go into endemic stage, there's so much new transition that's going to be happening. And with the courage that we choose to take on, it forces us to look at, be honest with ourselves and see what are our options, what are our choices, and what are new grounds and new opportunities that we can expose ourselves to. And to know that, so long we keep opening new windows of opportunity for ourselves, that there will always be hope that maybe one day one of that window will lead to a brand new world. You never know. So I think it's about being open, staying open, having the courage to keep trying, and that's what's going to help us to continue to stay moving forward in this pandemic. Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you. All right. So how about Megan? Megan, in your line of work especially, Why is that so important to then move forward with what life is constantly throwing at us?
Okay, so when I look at this question, I saw it's like a few parters. Like firstly, about courage, like what is it, right? And then how important is it is there other things that can come along with the courage that can be that can boost the importance of courage as well. So I like what Lillian said about how it's a very intentional thing. It's about intentional choices, and about how it's not the absence of fear, but it's something that we forge or find that gives us the strength to move forward. So I think courage credited in the right context is something that can be very powerful when it comes to making a choice or decision, right? Having the right type of courage can lead us to more opportunities and not set limitations for ourselves to experience a lot more of what life can offer for ourselves. And I feel like it can give a lot of hope, and it can build upon the dreams and goals that we have or have yet to develop or think of. If you don't mind, I will just share something that is a bit more, that is interesting, I think, that I've heard from my youths, is that I think sometimes courage can seem like something that is very scary, something that is very big. So I've heard from them that sometimes they don't really enjoy being praised for being courageous because they don't feel like they are, and it doesn't make them feel good, right? Especially if they have been put in an environment or situation where they feel they have had no choice, especially as a minor, right? Such as coming from abusive backgrounds and having family members not supporting them for their mental wellness journey, right? So some people will tell them like, oh, you're so brave for doing that. But they feel that they didn't actually do anything because, like I mentioned, they didn't have a choice. And they feel like it's not something to be courageous about. So what I like to do is actually praise them for the choices that they have made, and alongside telling them that actually what you did, right, like example, very extreme example, but filing a PPO, I think it's something that took a lot of courage from you. It took a lot of strength, as much as I also know that it's difficult. So sometimes alongside the courage, acknowledging the difficulties as well as validating the emotions that we may experience can help boost how we see courage and how much courage can do for us, right? So giving ourselves that space to feel and know that what we're going through is difficult as well. And sometimes it's not so much that, I don't have enough courage, but what you're going through is very real, right? And learning how to find that courage. Yeah.
I think, Megan, if you could elaborate, because not many people know what's PDPO.
Okay, basically it's like protection order, right? For example, youth who have gone through abusive relationships with their parents and they feel like they're no longer safe at home. So these are the types of youth that I deal with a lot, actually, as well as those that come with chronic suicidality. So we see more high-risk youths. So when this question was, I read it, definitely I immediately went to what I know, which is the work that I do. Yeah. So sometimes they feel like they had no choice, but they understood the importance of filing this PPO, even though there were so many factors that were standing in their way of seeking help. So I know that it's difficult, and having that courage itself didn't come easy. But I think the more we learn to practice and exercise that courage, the more a bigger part it can play for us also as we move forward into bigger challenges or more challenges in life.
It's like a muscle memory, right? The more you practice that, the more familiar you are able to tap into that resource.
Yes.
And bring that forward. And that's why I think the work that you're doing, or the work that your organization Limitless is doing, is beautiful. And that's why I think we're a loyal supporter even after hearing what you have. So let's make sure you scan the QR code. If not, the link will actually be in the Facebook chat and you can actually click it there. All right. So thank you, Megan, for sharing. Let's have Amy then. How do you actually manage change with courage, with everything that's going on?
Okay, so basically for me, it's right. My mom is my role model for courage. So when I was actually diagnosed with schizophrenia 27 years ago, actually I was hospitalized, and she actually made it a point to come and visit me every day without fail. She was actually doing a hawker business that time. So around noon time, she'll just close her business and come to bring me lunch. So actually her act of love is very inspiring to me, and is a very strong motivation that she never gave up hope on me. She never shied away from me. She never reject me because of what I am. And because of that, actually, she gave me the strong motivation and courage to move on in life and to face my challenges more bravely. And I also know that like if I also have the courage to actually seek out for help when I'm in some trouble, and seek out for help and have the courage to receive help, as well as I also take up the courage to actually share on the platform. In fact, before I wanted to share earlier this year, I actually seek like approval from my only son, because I feel that his opinion is the matters to me. And my mom was at that stage, she was actually a dementia patient, and she's at her last stage of her life. She passed on late June. So I know that these two persons are the most important people in my life. And I have the approval of my son to to do the sharing on this on the social platform. And I just recently shared on the Royal Singapore, and he saw the video, and he just came to me one night and he hugged me and say, "Mom, I saw your TRS video," and I feel very heartwarming, that at least I get some some it's a connection, it's a different connection. Like last time we used to be having some like issues, so now I feel more brave to face the world. Yeah, thank you.
You are full of that. Thank you for sharing that, Amy. Thank you. Okay, I need to calm myself. All right, I was feeling so much emotions welling up. Okay, Serene, you're up next. All right, Serene, so what do you do when there is change? Why is it required? How do you activate it? You've gone through so many life challenges.
Okay, so the question, it's divided into a few parts. What do I do when there's a change? I think it's required to do some actions, because sometimes circumstances don't allow you to stay the way you are or where you are in terms. So for me, one of the business failure was I was working with a partner, right? And we were working together to build up the agency for about 6 years, and then I got a surprise kicked up. So that change was inevitable. It came as a shock and a trauma, and of course there was a lot of self-doubts as well, wondering whether was it you didn't do the right thing, you weren't good enough, and a lot of negative thoughts. So it was a situation that forced you to see that you have to make a change. And so what were some of the steps that I did was I went through a period of downtime. And then what I did was I started to reflect on the situation and ask myself, what are some of the different perspectives that I can get out of that situation to see things in a more positive manner than looking at it from my current victim point of view. Right. So that was the first step that I did. And then after I began to see the situation in different perspectives, right, I began to write it down. I journal my thoughts, my anxieties, my regrets, or my whatever that bothered me. And then I started to weigh it. And then the third thing I did was to come up with an action plan on how to move forward. So I think moving forward is one of the most challenging thing, because it requires the first step to step out. So for someone like me, I find it easier to sit down and then start to write out a kind of like a plan, right? What would be the best case scenario if I do this, or what would be the worst case scenario if I do that? And then what are some of the backup plans that I can have? Or if I face this adversity, how can I react? So once I have kind of like an action plan done up, then it's really about allowing some time to myself to shift my mindset, and to then say, okay, I don't really have an official, okay, this is the day I wake up and then I'm going to do something different. I think sometimes that kind of thought makes you feel even more resistant to changing or making that first step, because it's like, I want to go on diet. Then you tell yourself, tomorrow, from tomorrow onwards, I want to do this, right? Then the tomorrow comes and somebody offer you a chocolate bar and you're like, okay, never mind, tomorrow, silently Tuesday. So I realized it's about taking small steps, right? One day at a time. I don't, during crisis time, I don't look too far. I don't want to think about 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road. I look at what can I do today to make tomorrow better. So one step at a time. And then what I do is I celebrate that little progress that I make on a daily basis.
Small wins, little wins that will make you through. And just like we were saying, right? That's where, I mean, it's amazing how everything is actually gelling together, listening from all of you. So let's throw that last question that we have on courage actually to Dr. Ho Yi-Ling. So Yi-Ling, how is courage? Because you deal with a wide spectrum of people coming in to see you. So how is actually courage different from the big spectrum of the baby boomers versus, right through to the millennials that we have now?
I think there's a lot of comparison, I suppose, right? It's made between baby boomers and millennials.
Is there
which
actually
I am
even
part
such a
of.
difference?
Yeah, exactly right. So I think, I mean, I guess if you were to really compare these two generations, it would be that, baby boomers are those that are born after the war, right? And they're really focused on, creating stable livelihoods, creating families, right? And just trying to just make sure that everything is just steady and stable right after the wars. Whereas for the millennials, I think if you were to look at the Maslow hierarchy of needs, right, like the basic needs are kind of met already. But there's we have to, this generation is about adjusting to rising costs, adjusting to I guess emerging gig economies and all these little things, right? Just emerging digital ages as well. And I think, I guess right now as well, the challenges also remain quite different for these two generations. For example, like, the baby boomers will be preparing for retirement maybe while having to adjust to this really rapidly changing digital age, right? And then the millennials, right, which I'm a part of, so it's also having to adjust to living in this really interconnected world and then trying to create a sense of identity that is unique to ourselves. So it's almost like, I guess our generation is focused on creating a life, creating jobs that is fulfilling, I suppose, right? So even though the set of challenges are quite different, I think how we show up to overcome these barriers, right, are probably more similar than we would expect. And just hearing from the other panelists as well about how they define courage, right? It's quite universal, right? It is about having the mental, moral strength to overcome difficult feelings, for example, right? Like fears, like pain and things like that. And I think that doesn't quite necessarily change no matter which generation you're from. And it really then speaks to how universal these experiences are, that we are actually more similar than we think we are, and I guess the way we show courage, right, can also be really shaped by the way we are brought up, right? Like hearing Amy's story, and then personal experiences, and also the people we surround ourselves with, right? Just hearing what Megan had also shared about the youth that she has worked with. So I think there's more similarities, I suppose, than differences. Yeah.
It sounds a bit like courage actually knows no age. It's seamless throughout, which actually transitions very nicely into our next theme of emotional resilience, because we're talking about courage, we're talking about emotional resilience here. And how is it when you are able to calm that frantic mind that's going to blah, 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 or that butterflies in all our stomach, I'm sure right now, as we're actually on the panel, after encountering a negative experience, or not so pleasant experience, right? How do we find that intrinsic motivation or that inner voice by which we hold ourselves through all the downsides of our life? Bit of a blanket statement here, but let's hear from our panelists, right? How have they actually activated or tie that emotional resilience through them? So let's hear from Lisa. Lisa first. So Lisa, what is emotional resilience to you?
I mean, definitively speaking, is the ability to adapt to stressful situation and crisis. And talking about emotional resilience, it's not something that I'm particularly strong in when I was younger. I think the good thing about emotional resilience is that it is a trait that you can learn, and it is something that I have learned over the years as I grew up. And I guess most people will be surprised to hear that I don't have very strong emotional resilience, because people tend to see me as somebody that's more extrovert, and they think that, oh, just because you're extrovert, you tend to be the one that's probably more optimistic, naturally being able to look on the positive side. But yeah, it's not the case for me. So I mean, just take for example, even at a younger age, for me to adjust to JC life from secondary school to junior college, it took me the whole year of JC1 to just settle in. And for that whole year, I was under so much stress. I was not looking forward to go to school at all. So yeah, you can imagine that was something that was that totally threw my mom off the track. She said, "What happened to you? You know, it doesn't look like you, doesn't seem like something that would be you." So as growing up, I began to be a bit more aware about these kind of negative emotion that comes out, anxiety and fear. What are the trigger points that brings about this kind of thing for me? And that's how I build up for me my emotional resilience, being a bit more aware about what are my trigger points, why they happen, when they happen. And for me, I think rest is something that's very, very important for me. I think we do tend to neglect that as teenagers. We just like to play, have fun, but I'm somebody who needs a lot of rest. So when I don't get enough of that, I think that's where it starts to spill over and the anxiety builds up. And yeah, so even as growing up, going to work, I think when pressures of the work comes and your boss gives you new challenges, it's not something that is instinctively easy as well. So emotional resilience that comes to, when you meet with difficulties at work, what happens next, and it's the ability to be able to open up and ask for help. Because for me, that was very difficult. But because over the years, I have become more aware of what are my trigger points and how I could actually, I did have a counselor for help in my growing up years. And I knew that when I had somebody else coming in on an external perspective, it brought a lot of illumination into how I can get out of my situation. So being able to talk to somebody. So when I was stuck at work, difficult as might be, because I would have to go to my colleagues, even colleagues from different departments, just to ask them for resources, ask them for help. It's just about having that humility to be able to say, look, I don't know everything, I need help. And I think what I realized that then was, it is okay to ask for help, because I think my mind tends to tell me that, people might not want to help, but actually when you do ask, you'll be surprised how much willingness there is actually out there. So yeah, so it's one thing about what is our mind trying to tell us, what we perceive, and versus what is the fact. So until I try, I never know. So which is why now for me, a lot of time is about trying new things and just asking. Yeah.
Thank you for actually asking for help, because that takes courage too. Yeah, it takes a lot of courage actually to ask for help as well. So thank you for sharing that, Lisa. Okay, I'm conscious of time here. So actually I asked my panelists for permission to overrun first time. Okay, never mind. All right. So Amy, you're up next. Amy, so how did you develop emotional resilience given the current condition that you have?
Okay, firstly, I'd like to thank Lisa for actually explaining the definition for emotional resilience, because it's like a big word to me. Although maybe I'm going through this thing, but I do not know actually what it is actually. So I actually Googled the definition myself. So actually, for me is that for emotional resilience, I try to enhance my self-awareness. Be aware of what are things that I like to do and what I do not like to do. I like to have more me time So that's the reason why I quitted my full-time job as a clinic assistant 2 years ago to become a Grab delivery rider, so that I can have I can actually reach the time that I like to do. And I also because at that time my mom was still around, so I wanted more time with my mom and with my son, because I identify them as the most important people in my life. So actually I find that money I can earn anytime, but then the time with my family members or the loved ones, I cannot just take it back anytime I like to, even with more money. So that is one point. And also I become more aware about my trigger points. What are the things that can make me go one. So actually one of my weakness is a relationship. So I realized that actually, like, if I am involved with someone, I can get very sometimes I can like not able to actually manage my relationship well with the other party. So it can triggers me and it can make me become very anxious, So I learn, and then I identified what are the from the lesson that I gone through with the past relationship, including my failed marriage. I took down points, and I also do journaling to actually identify what are the areas that I have gone wrong, or the other party is I can't control the other party, so I control my own one. So I slowly I try to change myself to be a better version of myself every day. I take baby steps. That's one thing. And secondly is that thirdly is also I become more aware about the boundaries. Last time I don't know what is called boundary, until one day when I listened into Waka, one of the speaker talking about setting our boundaries. So I learned, so I need to set boundaries, because sometimes people can push you to the limit. But if I set my own boundaries, I can actually protect my own interest. And then also I learn to be in the present. So this is one word that I learned from one of my teacher during one of the detox camp in Kulai last time. He told me, Amy, I got 4 words for you in Chinese, which is 活在当下. So I just need to make myself to be in the present, because last time I used to worry about the future, regret about the past, and I feel that it's not helping at all. So by actually being in the present, I seize the moment and enjoy the time that I'm with someone, and not like looking at my handphone, for example. And it also helps for me to acknowledge what is good and not good for me. If it's not supporting me, then I just put it aside. And also I will be grateful, practice gratitude, and focus on what are the good things for me. And I also practice having incorporate a routine lifestyle for myself. That really helps. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy, for sharing that portion. I think it's huge kudos seeing your development since the last time we reconnected again. Thank you, Amy. So actually, let's ask Serene, because Serene is actually an associate partner now with IAM. And given what she shared, right, Serene, maybe in a minute, could you tell us, right, how did you develop emotional resilience to be where you are today? That's quite amazing achievement.
Okay. Maybe I'll just share some of the challenges that I faced. So after the kicked out, some of the challenges I face are really more about resistance to transition. Okay, rejection from maybe could be your friends, your colleagues. All right. What do I mean by rejection? So, for example, you have an idea, you have some concepts, you have some things that you want to share by them. So it could challenges can come in a form of rejection by your peers, your direct boss, and even your clients that you present to. Right? You can plan out a blueprint for them, and they might just reject. So, and then of course, personally, it was also during last year's pandemic when we had to move everything from face to face to being online. Being a people person, it was really hard for me to be online. Yeah, I tend to, I resisted the idea about Zoom for a good 4-5 months before coming to terms with it and saying that this is the new way to go. And I had to find a more humanistic way in Zoom to then connect with my friends, connect with my clients as well. So some of the challenges that I had wasn't something that you can solve within a day or two. So what I did was, back to what I said earlier on, was to just have a reflection time and then to journal it down. I think what I wanted to do was to find things that will keep me motivated, encourage me. So for example, like music, very positive podcasts, speakers that talks to you about staying motivated, whether it's in your job, in your life. So I tune in more to that to encourage myself. And but one of the things that I really learned is to give more when you're hurting. I realized that as you give, you receive more. So the more you give, the more you receive. So that was one principle that I really learned in terms of developing emotional resilience.
Wow, Serene. So that's why you're giving all your time. No, not all. You're giving your time to the Women of Courage. And Serena has just come on board the community. So a warm welcome, Serene. So thank you so much for giving us your time and sharing and inspiring other women out there as well. Thanks, Serene. So now let's hear from Megan. Megan, how did you develop ER in your youth work? So yeah, 1 minute.
Yeah, so just sharing my background a bit. I think for a lot of my life, I come from a place with a lot of challenges. So I'm a lot of the time in like survival mode. So I always feel like, I'm not doing enough. I'm not good enough at what I'm doing. I have to fight for things. So I think going into youth work is a lot of like learning how to be very patient with myself and being very forgiving to myself. Just because I got so used to, beating myself up about things. So that is one trait that I feel like, I could improve on. And then the other thing is like what Amy said, I'm a person who cannot say no, because I feel like I have a tendency to be a people pleaser. So that drawing boundaries was very important for me when it came to doing youth work, because youth work can be very tiring, okay, if I'm honest. You're like a 24/7 crisis respondent sometimes, and a lot of times we go without sleep, right? Especially if there's a crisis or something happens. So I think I always felt that responsibility that I have to take to make sure that things go right. So building that emotional resilience also meant being kinder to myself and allowing myself to not take responsibility over things that, is not my responsibility. Yeah, so I think another thing will be the community and culture of Limitless actually gave me a lot of support when I was still adjusting to the work that I'm doing. And when I was so hard on myself for not picking things up fast enough or feeling that I didn't do well enough, they always say like, it's okay. We're all learning together. And just knowing that I have people there for me, that I can talk to, that I can be very honest with about my struggles, has helped me a lot. And of course, finding that meaning in the work that I do as well keeps me motivated. Yeah.
Got vacancy. Okay, never mind. Thanks, Megan, for sharing that little snippet into your work. It's really cool. Okay, so let's have Yiling. Yiling, how do you develop ER, emotional resilience, with your patients and in your line of work as well?
I think really the rest of the panelists has really done a brilliant job in discussing it. So I thought maybe I'll like summarize, wrap it up based on my perspective. So emotional resilience is really about the capacity to adapt, right, to stressful situations, and to move forward. And this capacity can actually be built, right? So it's not inborn, it's not like you have or you don't have it. It's not fixed, right? So that's why I always like to tell my patients, because that then instills hope that you can actually do something about this. So I think the capacity, right, for emotional resilience can actually be developed through self-awareness, self-acceptance, and also trust. Yeah. So because all of these components can then help us to encourage us to be more open to receiving support, right, to reaching out for support, and also more open to having new experiences, right? Because then that helps to foster confidence in ourselves as well. And I think I often tell my patients that, when they're struggling with certain mental health conditions, right? For example, like anxiety, and they will still be working and things like that. So I always tell them that, we want to see every challenge as an opportunity. an opportunity to practice, right? To practice overcoming, to practice being more self-aware of the difficult emotions that might come up, the critical thoughts that might come up, right? So because the more we practice, the better we are in picking up this, and the better we are in acknowledging that, hey, you know what, I can actually still move forward, even if I've got all these things going on. So I always try to reframe challenges as opportunities for them. And I think the last part I wanted to talk about as well is that emotional resilience, right, is also then about understanding that there are different parts to ourselves, that we have got parts that can be kinder to ourselves, that we've got parts that are a bit more critical, but the critical part can also push us to becoming better versions of ourselves, right? So I think it's about really understanding that we are not just one facet. We made out of multiple facets, and that we can actually accept and acknowledge all these different parts of ourselves, because this is what makes life meaningful, right? We can't be forever happy and optimistic and things like that. We will have our ups and downs, and it's to just give space for that. Yeah, so I think that's how I would usually try to build emotional resilience in the patients that I see.
It's beautiful, because you kind of summarized everything, and I think no need to go next question already, because courage is a muscle memory, as we know, and emotional resilience is something that can be built. So in that sense, similar to the muscle memory, it's just together. So they are good friends here that we need to tie together. Thank you, Yiling, for sharing that. So let's hear from Lillian, actually. So how have you developed your emotional resilience?
Right. I think thanks to all the panelists for sharing your thoughts. And I think before I answer directly to that specific questions, thanks to all the audience who have been contributing your questions in the pigeonhole. Right. We have a lot of questions over there, and we hope that most of the questions are already being answered by the panelists during their sharing. So specifically, I hope my answer will hope to answer some of the questions that are being posted in the pigeonhole. I do totally agree with Dr. Yiling that awareness is the first step to that whole process of building emotional resilience. Because for some of you who know my story, where I talk about the breakdown of my own emotional breakdown, it was a mental and emotional breakdown. So having that self-awareness of your emotions and taking control of it, developing it and taking control of it is so critical, because if you have not heard my story, you can go and watch the video about how I came to a mental and emotional breakdown. Yeah, you don't want to suppress it. If you do not acknowledge your emotion, and you suppress it so much so until you will come to a point of emotional meltdown. And that's what happened to me. And it affects everything in your life, right? Like Dr. Yiling said, we have different facets of our life, and relationship was affected for me, right? Relationship with my spouse, relationship with my family. Yeah, I would say primarily relationship was affected. And I was in that cycle and that pit of not just depression, but the suicidal thoughts was so real. Yeah, and even led to, if you don't master your emotions, it will lead into actions as well. And for me to deal with that, to develop that emotional resilience, is to go to the root. To me, it was go to the mind, to the thought life, because whatever thoughts, whatever stories are telling to yourself has an emotion that associate with it. And if it's a negative emotions, and it will also translate into negative behaviors, which explains in the past, most of the things that I do the decisions that I make were very emotionally led. So for our audience out there, if you find that, all the decisions that you are making and your behavior are all very emotionally led, for me personally, what works very well for me, and it has still been working very well, is to go to my mind, renew my mind, the renewal of the mindset, the belief system that has an emotion attached to it, which drives the behavior that led to the outcome that you are, the consequences, the outcome that you are in right now. So personally, to get out of my emotional pit of suicidal thoughts, depressions, and all the relationship crisis, yes, I started with awareness and acknowledging my belief system, being aware of what's going on in my head, what are the voices that you are telling yourself, and also the emotions that attach to that. Yeah. So that's that. I hope that helps to answer some of the questions in the pigeonhole as well.
Thank you so much, Lillian, for sharing that from your perspective. And it's a very powerful story. So do listen in onto, I think it's on the YouTube channel as well, right? And the Women of Courage Asia's Facebook group as well. So that brings us very nicely to the next theme that we have here of combining both courage and emotional resilience, as we have actually heard about from all our panelists. How do we then combine? So let's listen first from Serene, because when we talk about courage, we talk about emotional resilience, this combined, right? So Serene, can we hear from you, right? What can we do? What can one actually do for themselves if they realize that they are experiencing symptoms of mental health issues? Because this is actually coincidentally a question in the pigeonhole where we're receiving live questions as well. So what can one do when they actually are experiencing symptoms of all these mental health issues?
I think the very first thing that I want to encourage everybody is to reach out. You're never alone. I think for women, a lot of times we tend to think a lot in our mind. We can have like 3,000 thoughts going on.
Running together.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so you can have positive thoughts, and then you can have also a lot of self-doubt thoughts running together at the same time. And so when it comes to a crisis time, it's very natural for all those negative thoughts to really just drown out a lot of the positiveness. And we always tend to think that we should just keep it and be strong. I like one of what Megan was sharing, that actually some of us, we have a lot more similarities than we are actually aware of. And so in reaching out, it's not about saying that you can't, but I think in reaching out, the perspective is about, I'm reaching out because I know that I can have a community of friends, ladies, that I can walk with me. We may not have the exact same situation, but they will walk with me. So you just need company to help you along in this journey. So that's the first step. I think what are some of the things that you can look out for to begin to know if you're going through?
So what is the most obvious thing then? Let's zoom down into that most obvious thing. Yeah.
I feel in my situation, it was a constant feeling that I'm just stuck in a rut. No matter what I do, whether I did well in my sales today or I did well in presenting today, I'll go home feeling I'm just stuck. I don't feel I'm getting a breakthrough. That's number one. Number two, I start binging on TV. So if I'm going to start sitting in front of TV and I'm watching a series for the next 8 hours because I don't want to feel any emotions. So the thing about TV binging is about blocking out the emotions that I'm feeling, right? So one of the key things, if I'm going to start to say, okay, I just want to relax, don't want to think, but I binge too much. So this is a fine line. So if I binge too much, if I feel that I'm stuck in a rut, and even if I feel, let's say I go for church service and then the pastor preach a really awesome sermon and I feel very motivated, but maybe on Monday, whatever motivation I felt already fizzle out. So these are things that will start to give me some ideas that maybe my mindset is not doing so well. How I view things is not very healthy. And then I'll start to run through what are some of the steps that I can take to then renew my mind, like what Lillian has mentioned earlier on.
So like Serene, you're bringing out the coach hat now. What is that one thing that you did when that mind started running away and you were saying, you heard a great sermon, but on Monday it kind of fizzled out? So what was that one thing that you did that actually helped anchor you down into remembering that, hey, let's continue on?
My boss actually shared this poster with us just the other day. And this poster was talking about this story of a grandpa telling a little boy that there's actually 2 wolves living in us as a story. So one wolf is filled with resentment, jealousy, greed, anger, bitterness, frustration. And the other wolf is filled with kindness, empathy, grace, love, hope. right? And then the boy asked the grandpa, so which wolf won in the end? And then the grandpa said, the wolf that you feed will win in the end. I think that story really impacted me about quite a couple of years ago. It impacted me because it goes back to in the beginning when we talk about making a choice, right? So a choice is something that's purposeful, right? It's very objective based. Sometimes you may have to tell yourself to be a little bit more heartless, right? Don't lean too much on the emotions. On I feel this, I feel that, but to look at the facts. You may not feel good about yourself, so you may have a lot of negative thoughts. I'm kicked out because I wasn't good enough. I'm kicked out because I was too lost or, too this, too that. And although your belief may be, I wasn't good enough, but you also got to look at practical things about your own achievements, your own milestones, and start to put some positive words back into your life.
So it's really about who do you feed, or which self, like what Yiling was saying earlier, which self do you want to feed, right?
Yes.
Much more. And the person you feed, obviously the person will grow. And then
stronger they will be.
Exactly, the stronger they will be. So it's a choice that I think we all have as well. So thank you, Serene, for sharing that. Thank
Pleasure.
you. Amy, let me summarize my question asked earlier. What made you decide to share your story, Amy?
Okay, so when I got the diagnosis, right, at first I was actually I didn't know what to do, and actually it was like relapses after relapses, and only when I about maybe 5 years ago, after 20 years of the condition, I decided that I need to put a stop to all these repetitive relapses, and I started to seek out for help, like counseling, and I also, like a recent 2 years, I actually went to alternative healing like body talk, and I uses Chinese metaphysics to have a better understanding about myself. And I like to, the reason why I want to share my story is that I like the people out there to have a better understanding about how people like us think. And actually, because other than coping with our mental condition, we need to actually also handle society treatment towards us. So for example, if I go for, let's say, go for a job interview, and I will actually ponder about whether should I reveal my condition to my boss to be. Usually I will keep it a secret lah. Like after that, because from my psychiatrist told me that unless I'm actually going to work in a political field or government sector, then I have the need to reveal it. Other than that, actually I can actually hide my condition to them. And for example, my clinic job, which I took up in 2014, actually that time I didn't reveal to my doctor that I was actually having this mental condition. So only when in about 2018, 4 years later, that I decided, I brought the courage to tell my boss, and my boss actually responded by saying that, Amy, just carry on doing what you're doing now, because you look okay, you look normal to me, so just continue doing your job. So actually, to answer the question in the pigeonhole, that actually it's up to you to whether you want to share about your condition. If you think that you are actually quite mild, then it's okay, to share. Some boss, depending on personality, they can be very understanding, but usually people will judge, like, sad to say. So another thing is that so I want to share this story is to I hope to inspire more people to come up to seek for early treatment. And actually because I usually talk to people openly about my condition and like interact, and then I heard about girl, actually she says that she suspects she got depression, but she do not dare to go out to seek for proper medical treatment because she afraid that her family will say something about that, which I feel is quite sad, but I do not really know how to tell her what to do lah. Then did anything actually prevent me from speaking out and or seeking help initially? Okay, I would say that for me is I'm quite a very direct person. So I don't feel like there's a need to hide about my condition to friends or family. Definitely family is quite a supportive pillar for me lah. Then only during the situation of during a job interview that I will hide from hide from the boss or my colleagues, because I realized that after I review about my condition, sometimes my then colleague will take it as a weapon against me. So this is something that you have to be mindful about.
Thank you, Amy, for sharing that side. And I think with that, actually, I want to take that opportunity to also reach out, because that's the purpose of the Mental Health Day that we're celebrating tomorrow. And that's the reason why we're actually having this fireside chat, even to tell the world that, excuse me, we're all human, and to have some humility in all of us. Okay, I feel like I'm scolding, but but really is to have that humility and perhaps empathy for that other person who may be going through some challenges, and just be that support and just perhaps even a listening ear. So thank you, Amy, for taking courage.
Lillian, can I add on something?
Please.
So I have two things. One thing is that to have clarity about what you want in this lifetime, and second thing is second thing I forgot already. So sorry.
It's okay. When you remember, then you tell us again.
Okay, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Amy, for sharing that, because I think you have addressed some of the questions that are in the pigeonhole as well that we're also receiving live. So thank you for that. I think you got some loyal supporters. Yes.
Second thing is to ignore the naysayers. So like people will just say something about you, just ignore them, just pretend you never see.
Yeah, see no evil, right? Don't want to hear, don't want to see.
Just carry on with what you see. Thank you.
Correct. Thank you, Amy, for sharing that. Actually, your question leads very quick. Your answers actually very nicely into the next one with this. Megan, I'm going to adjust the question a little bit, because with what you had shared and what we've heard and what I'm actually seeing in the Q&A, I'm trying to kill a few birds at one stone, because I'm very conscious we overran on the commitment of your time here. So, the original, with the journey that you've been through, and with you seeing actually close loved ones, actually also facing challenges with mental health issues, how do you then, or how can we, right, as individuals then support our loved ones or even our friends who come forward and have taken that courage?
Okay, so I guess as a professional, I can share from the perspective of how you support. But as a person with lived experience, I can also share with you how I've been supported. Okay, so firstly, you all probably have heard this before somewhere, because I think that the things I say are very like PC and standard. But I would just say, just being present with the people around you, and to be able to listen to them without judgment, right? Not imposing on them whatever we believe or what our opinions may be on mental health or certain conditions, but it's really understanding that you're taking that perspective from what the person is sharing, and it's not your own, right? Even when we go through the same situation, sometimes our experience of it will be very different, and that's how we should, understand that the person is going through something. Okay, obviously don't give unsolicited advice, right? I think it's okay to give suggestions like, this has worked for me before, or I've heard of this, maybe you want to try, but never, enforcing on them that you must do this or you should do this. Yeah. One thing that we can always do is understand that the person is obviously the expert on how they are feeling, right? So asking them the question of how would you like to be supported, or what kind of support do you think that you may need? On our own, of course, I think it'll be helpful to get psychoeducated to learn a bit more about mental health and the different signs of distress or symptoms that people may be experiencing, right? And of course, never dismiss what someone says, so don't take it lightly. I guess it's also an opportunity for us to learn from different people about things that they're going through, as well as the bigger scope of mental health. For myself, personally, I think it was kind of along the lines of understanding that not everyone will know the right way to respond. So initially, I would get very upset, okay, when people don't understand what I'm talking about, or they just tell me, hey, just go and sleep more, or maybe you go and exercise more, then you feel better. Then I'll feel very, very dismissed about it. Yeah, like, hey, how come you got no job yet? Or hey, how come all your relationships are like not working out? Right? So these kind of very judgmental comments I felt were very unhelpful for me. And I think what really helped was when someone actually asked me, like, do you want to go and see a professional, and I will accompany you because I know how scary it can feel, it can be. Yeah, so I think that was the point where I felt the most supported, actually, when people were open to listen, and I know that they were there for me. And even though I may be going through something that they are not familiar with, as for the people who respond to me in a way I don't like, what I do now is I talk to myself and I tell myself that, okay, if I fight with them, I'm not going to help them understand better, right? But I can try my best to give them a view on what it is I may be going through. And if they still cannot understand, it's totally fine, because it's nothing to do with me. It's not my fault, and it's not my responsibility to make them understand also, right? And then from there, I kind of like feel the waters a bit and see who is more receptive, and then I choose who to share what with more wisely from there. Yeah.
It reminds me of what was said earlier. We start drawing our boundaries. And then we draw our boundaries already, and it's like, okay, you're a naysayer, forget it. You're not worth my time.
Yeah.
Delete. Okay, sorry, couldn't resist that. Thank you so much, Megan, for sharing that. I think that's very insightful, and it actually addresses a few questions that are in the pigeonhole as well. So let's have Dr. Ho, you're up next. So Yiling, I check with you, because we've been talking about mental health issues, we've been talking about courage, we've been talking about resilience and all this, and there's actually there's some questions on the chat about, do they have to rely on medication, or what are some of the symptoms of mental health issues that, like, what are the triggering, or like, what are the red flags that one needs to be aware of, that they need to seek help? And when they do seek help, is medication the only option?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think that's a really important one. So I guess generally, right, all of us would experience ups and downs in moods, right? And I think the one thing that might prompt you to really take notice is if it starts to impact on your functioning. So be it occupational functioning, work, so ability to perform your work, ability to have interpersonal relationships, for example, to maintain interpersonal relationships, right? Be it with colleagues, family members, spouses, partners, or also day-to-day functioning. So, for example, if you're not sleeping at all, you're not sleeping really well, you have lost the appetite, you started gaining weight or losing weight. So all these things that might affect your day-to-day living, right? Can't concentrate properly, can't make decisions properly. And you start to see that actually this is really affecting other aspects of my life. I think that's when we would need to pay a bit more attention to ourselves and to speak to people whom we trust. Yeah, so like just tapping on to what Megan had shared earlier, right? That we want to be able to see who we can go to, right? Because we don't have to, even though we may have a network of really close friends or people, right? Some of them are more, I guess, able to support you in that way. So you don't have to necessarily have all 10 friends, right? But you can choose. Yeah, so every person, I guess, serves a particular function, I suppose, in your life, right? The way they support you. So you can reach out to them and just talk things out. And then I would then also encourage them to maybe consider speaking to someone professional about this. Yeah, when it starts to impact their functioning. When, let's say, if about medication, right? So now medication is usually prescribed if, let's say, your ability or capacity to engage in psychological therapy or counseling, right, is limited because of how distressed you may be feeling, or how persistent your thoughts may be, right? So if, let's say, so if your ability to engage therapy is impacted, right, then that's when the psychologist or the counselor will refer you to see a psychiatrist to get some medications to just stabilize things so that you're on an even plane, and then you can absorb those things that are taught in talking therapy and counseling sessions a bit better. Yeah. So then, of course, so studies and research has found that the best efficacy is a combination of both. Combination of both. If people do need medication, yeah. Why is it so? Because medication is a way to, again, bring you down to baseline. But the psychological therapy and counseling is to give you the skills. So it's to give you the internal skills, right? So then you can start to wean yourself off the external help, which is the medication. Yeah. So that's why the counselor, the psychologist will work quite closely with the psychiatrist, or doctor, if the patient has one. So then they will, for myself, I will update the referring psychiatrist, like, okay, actually they're doing quite well. The patient had asked whether they would like, they can adjust their medication. So I told them that to consult you with this, and I'll provide updates, for example. So that's how medication can play a role. Yeah.
You also addressed another question that came in through, then is that a lifetime subscription over there for medication? So you just said, no, it's possible to wean off, and it's actually an aid to help. But once you are stable, you and the person that you're partnering with in that journey feel that you're stabilized, you can then wean off. So thank you, Yiling, for sharing that aspect with us, because I think there is a lot of gray misnomer out there, and especially with what is available in this digital age of information, there may be a lot of misguiding available as well. So I think you just put things into perspective.
Yeah, can I just add another
Please.
important point? So with the medication, because I'm not a psychiatrist. Psychiatrist is a trained medical doctor that specializes in psychiatry. So I would really advise, for individuals out there who are on medication, to not wean yourself off, because the withdrawal can be significant, can produce significant side effects. So really consult your psychiatrist about it, even if you're working with a psychologist or a counselor. Yeah,
I see. Okay, so the audience can't see because we're on we're zooming in on Facebook Live as well. But I see Megan and Amy like frantically nodding their head through, supporting your answers as well, because I think they can personally relate to it from the work that they've done, or from the journey that they've taken, how true it is. So don't take matters into your own hands. Consult an expert, and then decide in a consultative approach what is the best approach next. What do you want to do? Is it necessary or not, right? So thank you so much for sharing that insightful information with us, because so let's we actually have Lisa. But before we go on to Lisa, Megan also mentioned something about, knowing what are the red flags and how you can seek for help, and how you can actually be aware of what are some of the mental health awareness, which is actually Limitless is actually also sharing that as part of as a token of gratitude or appreciation for participating in the run. They are actually running a series of workshops for the donors as well, so that you are better prepared, we're better aware of what's actually happening in the mental state of mind. I think that encompasses everything. Yeah, thank you. So Lisa, how have you activated your courage and ER in the past? So I think in the interest of time, can you share with us one example, please?
Yeah. So I mean, for myself, I think the most prominent time that when I needed to activate my courage and ER was possibly when I had my postpartum depression. So I mean, at that point, it was like what Dr. Yiling was mentioning, it was affecting my daily life. So what happened was, while I was still functioning, doing my day-to-day job very, very well, but that became to have episodes where I would just have a quarrel with a colleague or heated argument or something, and it would just cause me to just burst into tears for no rhyme reason. And I'm not normally very emotional person, and I will not display such things at work. But when that started happening, after a few episodes, I started wondering, that doesn't seem very right. It's not very me. And I could of course sense that the mood generally then was I'm always very tensed up at home, constantly having a lot of things going through my mind. And the thing that kind of got me thinking about something was wrong with me was when I had a thought about causing harm to my kid. So that to me was a big wake-up call. And for me, I think why I had to activate it was very clear. Somebody's safety was at risk, and I needed to do something about it. So I was quite prompt in that way, that I actually had a chat with my husband about it, and decided to take some time off and just relieve myself of some duties and just take time to find myself again. And at that point already, I was already trying to overcome a lot of negative thoughts, and it's just a spiral, you know, you just keep finding yourself in that loop where you can't seem to get out of it. And yeah, I had to approach a psychiatrist for help as well, and that was when he prescribed some things, and it was just a very, very small dose, but I think what it helped to do was to lift the fog off my mind, and I was just able to kind of like have some times when I could think clearly up for myself. Yeah, and that being done, then I went on to, of course, do a bit more work on myself to break that cycle of negative thoughts. So as I read up more, it's like building about new neural path, because I understood that every time when there is a trigger factor, that tends to lead to one next thought, and then the next thought, and the next thought, right? So what I learned to do was to break it when I find the trigger point, and I replaced it with something else. So for me, when I was able to do that, I felt that I had tremendous breakthrough, in the sense I could be able to focus more positively. I was able to channel those negative thoughts to somewhere where I can constructively help myself. So yeah, so that was my breakthrough in that sense.
Sorry, I was muted and I was talking. That's really beautiful, Lisa. Thank you for sharing the vulnerable portion of you as well. I think it encourages the women out there who may be facing challenges, actually, maybe with the first child or second as well. Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. Actually, so let's ask Lilith, because she's actually a strong champion of courage and the community builder behind the Women of Courage. So how have you actually, Lilith, emerged a victor, I would say, of your journey?
Wow, I think putting the emerge as a victor is quite a big hat, but we are all constantly
emerging then.
emerging, yes. Constantly, daily emerging.
Yeah.
Right. I think one thing I want to highlight was that I can totally resonate with Lisa. Yeah. Because the thought of for me would be, you know, for you mentioned about harming, the wake up call was like harming your child, right? Yeah, that applies to me as well, actually. During my depression, when I know that, when I came to that awareness of knowing that I constantly want to throw myself down buildings, you know, I constantly battle with suicidal thoughts. And the worst part was when I'm having thoughts of throwing my baby against the wall or throwing my baby down the building. So those thoughts are very scary thoughts. And I'm just thankful that we didn't act it out. Yeah. But and during my time, I have no idea, no knowledge about psychology, psychiatrists, or psychologists, or therapies. Yeah, I didn't know how to approach such support. And there is a stigma to it. Yeah, it's very stereotypical. You know, there's a stigma to approaching such expertise for help. But the good news is that it is possible to walk out of depression without being dependent on medication or psychotropics. But of course, like what we all mentioned earlier, if you're already on the medication, or you know, your situation depending on your own discretion. But I just want to add a glimpse of hope, right? That it is possible to walk out of depression without, you know, at the mercy and dependence of medication and psychotropics, because I'm a living example here. And some of you are also, actually. I just want to answer one of the questions that's related to your question for me in the pigeonhole. Someone asked, how does having the awareness help you to move forward? So I think having the awareness and then checking in with, you know, your mindset and all that, the next step is taking actions, right? Because I always like to say this: awareness empower you with a choice, right? And courage is a choice. Awareness empower you with a choice to take intentional action to create the change that you want to see in your life. So after I came to answer our audience question in the pigeonhole, after having the awareness about the condition that I'm in, where I was, my mental, emotional state, and my physiological state as well, the behaviors, the negative patterns that I was stuck in, I had a decision to make, right? But the first question that I asked myself was, I don't know about whether you ask yourself this question, I hope you do, or if not, start asking, what is the whole purpose of your life? Why are you here on this planet Earth? Why are you even, in existence? And that one question helped me to look at life very differently, right? And then once I slowly, it's a process as well, but as I get certain level of clarity and answers along the way in the journey, I start to take courage, right? To step out of my comfort zones. I have lots and lots of comfort zone. I'm sure all the audience out there have your own comfort zone as well, and your own way of numbing yourself and escaping, right? Like some of you have shared earlier. So I took the first step of action was to step out of my comfort zone. I was operating like a zombie. Everything was very predictable. You want to know where I was at what time? It's predictable. I was like a walking zombie. But the decision to change led to actions that I may be reluctant to take, but I know that it is necessary to help me move forward, right? And then working on the mind, going back to renewing your mind, there's so many negative limiting belief system in me that I have to tear them down one by one. So the next step that I took was to tear down my limiting beliefs. And I also invested in myself. I invested in my own personal growth and development and reach out for support. Yeah, I didn't have that kind of support that we have right now. Which is why, organically we started Connecting Mother Support Group, and then after that, Women of Courage Asia. So these are community support. Support system is so important because we all have blind spots, that we can't see. They are blind spots. We can't see it, right? So community, I cannot emphasize the importance of community support. It really helped to get us moving forward, nudge ourselves forward. Yeah.
So with what you said, right, Lillian, then what is that one thing, right, that you would like to leave with our audience if they don't remember anything here? Or what is that one thing that you like to leave with our audience for them to remember so that they can move forward confidently with courage? What is that one thing?
Reach out for support. Reach out for support and invest in yourself. Yeah. Okay. Love yourself. You are love yourself, and because you love yourself, you want to reach out for support.
Okay, thank you. Actually, that's a question that I like to throw to open up to all our panelists. So yeah, let's hear from everyone here. Okay, no need to call names already. We're at the last, right? So Lillian was mentioning reach out for support. What is yours? Anyone who's ready to share, please unmute. Amy, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I'll say that one thing is we learn to be our own son. So we by learning, it means that we look inward and learn to be contented with what we have. Yeah, always reconnect back to yourself and listen to your inner voice. Yeah.
Listen to yourself, reconnect, and always listen to your inner self. What you want, just do it. Thanks, Amy. Lisa, you were saying something.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I feel like there's three ways in any situation. We either loved it, leave it, or we need to change it. So, but I think the most important in everything, right? But we need to learn to first find value in ourselves. Yeah, because when we don't find value in ourselves, we cannot move forward. Yeah, so in order to be able to change anything, we need to start with ourselves. Yeah.
So start with ourselves. Very good. Thank you, Lisa. So Megan, Serene, Yi, Mini, Mini, go. Just unmute. Yeah.
I mean, everyone has already said it so well. I'm like thinking, what should I say? I think, yeah, just
no pressure.
right. So that's what I'm gonna say. Just don't be too hard on yourself. Extend kindness to yourself and others. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's so true, right? Because I was just sharing in another group this morning meeting. I think we are I'm my own worst critic. So in that sense, we are our own worst critic. And like what Yiling was sharing earlier, there is two sides of us. One is that self, which is critical to self, but that actually helps us drive us further. But there's also the one that needs to remember to be kind to ourselves and say, hey, not bad, good job. Great meeting that you had. Hey, good sales figure, like what Serene was saying. Hello, give yourself some credit here, right? That self-love that we have to practice. Thanks, Megan. Serene, Yiling?
Yeah, it's probably the same thing. You just got to learn to be kind to yourself. I think a lot of times we are kind to our loved ones, we are kind to people around us. We tend to extend the empathy and the understanding to them, but we don't do that so often back to ourselves. And I think it's a habit that we need to can start to remind ourselves that, hey, if I can be understanding when my friend does this, or when the situation does this and my friend react this way, I can be understanding of myself when something happens. It's about a perspective of not seeing things in a perfectionist mindset that help us to be kinder to ourselves.
So can relate and so guilty there also. Thanks, Yiling.
I think I can imagine how some viewers who are listening to this may also find it difficult they don't know where to start, right? How do you start to be kind, right, to ourselves, to accept ourselves? I think it will be helpful to either read up, to go to like free platforms like Spotify, check out podcasts. I think podcasts can be a good way to start, because that's what I did as well myself. When I had to go through some difficult transitions too, and I think then listening to how other people overcome things, listening to how other people, the experience of other people actually makes you realize that you're not that alone, and that it can be quite heartening, it can be quite inspiring, and then you start to shift. You start to be able to give some space to yourself as you're listening to other people talk about their own lives, well-known people, very established people, or just your everyday people. And I think that can be very powerful. Like it can be a first step that you can take. So YouTube channels, Spotify podcast, all your free things, you can start from there.
Can I put a caveat out there? Okay, sorry, Liz, go ahead. You wanted to share something?
No, sorry, yeah, I was just want to add on, like, also, I think anything that kind of fills our soul, we all need soul food. So I think we need things to make ourselves feel rejuvenated. So you need to go to those places again to rejuvenate it, by all means. So, and also to set like small achievement for ourselves, small goals. So like when I actually had to go through like self-development classes, just simple things like learning how to cook, cooking, being able to sew something, being able to draw something, that little achievement that you did, right, actually brings a lot of soul food to ourselves. So to find yourself to be able to do something that you were not once able to do, that is a big confidence booster actually, and it does a lot to people who are actually having low self-esteem or struggling with negative mindsets about themselves. So I think this is also a good way for them to start coming out from their shell in that way. Yeah.
Actually, one thing I remembered was do something different. As in that means maybe you had a hobby that you wanted to try out, but you never had the time, or you never thought that you had the courage to do it, and so these are little things that you can celebrate. Like maybe you wanted to do skiing, right, but you never found the courage. You always think you're too old, too young, too dangerous, something like that. Just take up a trial class, go for it. You may not sign on and do it permanently, but that experience is something that differentiates and give you something different to experience. Something it could be a revelation for you. We won't know. So go and try something new. So that could be one way.
Oh, sorry, too many online octopus now. Okay, thank you so much, all my panelists, my dear panelists, for sharing, for overstaying, and with just that one thought, right, to inspire and empower another individual out there. I think it's genderless here, right? To share, to inspire, and to really empower, and just be that listening ear, just being present with everyone that is actually taking that courage to talk to you, right? Without judgment, right? Not offering advice, but guidance. So a lot of nuggets of wisdom that has been shared. I see our chat group going crazy on FB. I see the questionnaires on Pigeonhole, but it's been a wonderful lunchtime chat show, and I will promise to keep it tight. And I think there are a lot of takeaways. So if you like to continue engaging with any of us, our social media handles are actually on the Facebook live chat. You can actually connect with any of us there. And of course, you're more than welcome to continue asking questions as well. So please feel free. I'd like to thank my panelists for allowing me to be your moderator and to hold that space together so that we can really grow. And I'm learning so much actually from everyone here as well when you share your story. So thank you very much for allowing me into your space and for moderating this panel. So with that, I hand it over back to Lillian to close. Lisa, you wanted to share something? No, okay. So I hand it then over to Lillian to close.
Right. Thank you so much, panelists and Lynette. I just want to add one last thing, right? Because some of you, we have shared about what's the next step, what's the action. If you really do not know what to do, this is what you can do, right? Because we are going to end this mental wellness campaign with a city night walk. We talk about loving yourself, right? Take care of yourself, your soul needs and all that. Yeah, join us in this night walk. Right, we will share the information on our Facebook page, right? So do join us. That is happening on the 30th of October. Right, come and befriend the community, right? And on the 26th, right, if it's a MEM can show the monthly empowerment meeting at Women of Courage Asia. We have a monthly empowerment meeting where the ladies will take the courage to come forward and share their stories of courage and their key learning and takeaways to inspire and empower you with strategies to actually move forward, right? So if you are in the midst of thinking how you can move forward, looking for a community, join us, right? This is happening on the 26th of October, right? It's actually every last Tuesday of the month. So yes, go to our Facebook page or just womenofcourage.asia. The information are all there. So thank you once again for your valuable time with us, right? And we see you at the monthly empower meeting as well as at the city night walk. Thank you. Right. Thank you, ladies. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.